Hey guys. Oh, I'm so annoyed because I tried recording this whole thing and then somehow it didn't work. Oh, technology. It's so frustrating. Okay, so I have to do this again. So this is about fat loss and hormones, and this is gonna give you a little bit more background and information about what you should do in terms of where you're at right now, and just a little bit more background and education around what it means in terms of hormones and why hormones are so affected by your fat loss. So again, your DNA is not your destiny. Your lifestyle choices are, and what you eat and how you move affects your script completely. It's all about your choices, and you have a choice to change the script. So what we want to do in this program is 3 primary objectives: retrain the brain, practice mindfulness, and really slowing things down, becoming more conscious and aware of your chewing, of your breathing, of your movement, becoming aware of your fullness factor. This is a daily practice that takes conscientious thought and intention. So I want you to really take that seriously. It's not just a trendy thing to say, but practicing mindfulness is really a practice, just like building a muscle. And what we want to also do is improve our nutrients for efficient fat loss. So eliminating foods that don't serve us, but crowding in the foods that help us to um, clear our system, reset our hormones, and give the proper data our body needs to efficiently lose fat. So you know that the standard American diet is too energy dense, has too many calories, but nutrient poor. We want to stay away from this and basically retrain our bodies and our brains to reinterpret the kind of fuel that we're allowing to enter our bodies so that we can become much more efficient about resetting our hormones for fat loss. So when you have pure energy and minimum nutrient density in terms of refined carbohydrates and refined oils and starchy foods and starches that have very light white, this is the cause of insulin resistance and obesity. It basically, your body interprets that as increasing insulin and storing fat. If you go to the right side of this chart, really pure nutrition is maximizing each bite per bite as much nutrition as possible. So foods that increase hunger include high fructose corn syrup, sugar, soda, white bread, boxed macaroni and cheese, anything that's packaged and processed that has hormone disruptors in it, has preservatives and chemicals in it that our body naturally doesn't want to interpret as real food, as nutrition that actually helps us to heal and bring our bodies back to homeostasis and healing, and give our bodies the ability to reset itself. We know that chronic stress and belly fat levels are actually correlated. So when you have repeated amounts of stress on a daily basis, it affects your belly fat level. So when you feel like you're not fitting into those jeans and you're feeling like you have too much belly fat, just know that chronic stress on a daily basis actually contributes to that. It's not just about what you're eating, but also how you're managing stress. I want to get into intermittent fasting, and basically what intermittent fasting helps us do is reset the function of our cells, genes, and hormones. And several things happen. Basically, your insulin levels drop insignificantly, which can help facilitate fat burning. Your human growth hormone increases. So any kind of Muscle gains and lean mass gains would happen when you're fasting. It actually resets your genes and your cells to be able to build more muscle. You are also going through cellular repair by fasting. So your body induces an important cellular process, just like when you're sleeping, to remove waste material from your cells, which is called autophagy. Um, you also change your gene expression. So basically, you experience beneficial changes in your genes and molecules, so that you're protecting your bodies and your beings against disease, and improving immune function and longevity and aging. So insulin levels drops, human growth hormone increases, you're expanding your life, you're reducing oxidative damage and inflammation and risk of heart disease, and you're rebalancing your leptin hormone and your ghrelin hormones so that you can get into better fat burning mode. So the power of intermittent fasting, really restricting your eating windows between 14 to 16-hour days for several days, is that it reduces your blood glucose and your insulin factors. So insulin is spiked every time you're having a carbohydrate and every time you're eating. And it goes higher when you're having refined carbohydrates because it has it interprets it as having more carbohydrates, more sugar in it. Um, and it reduces your insulin levels. When you reduce your insulin levels, automatically your liver produces ketones, and your liver produces ketones as a chemical messenger to search for an alternative energy source. So what it does is when your insulin levels come down, and for a significant period of time, ketones move up and ketones increase. And basically, when your ketones increase, your body is searching for an alternative fuel source because it cannot find glucose in your blood. And what that induces is essentially fat burning. And so ketones search for ways to gather energy from your fat cells, and that's how you lose weight. And overall, you'll have increased mental clarity, energy, and cellular repair. So we typically have 3 meals a day, and everybody says, got to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and your work life and our schedules are designed to be around breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You got your breakfast break, your lunch break, and your dinner break. I want you to kind of change that mindset. Like, is it really necessary to have 3 meals a day? When you're having 3 meals a day, eating in that window of 12 hours, basically, you're spiking your insulin throughout the day. And what it does is it's telling your body to store fat. It's giving your body very little chance to actually get into burning fat as fuel, as an energy source. So in the green area is really in a fasted state, and that's the time that you go to sleep and after dinner. So you want to leverage that time after dinner and your sleeping time into the next morning to be able to give your body a chance to burn fat. Insulin resistance is a bad thing because if you have high insulin, you're basically producing more fat cells. So when your fat cells are full and there's no other place to, put, your fat, it is creating new fat cells to fill it with the amount of glucose that you have. So when this happens on a repeated basis and you're tapping into your insulin levels on a regular basis, essentially you become insulin resistant. Your insulin becomes less responsive, and you're just continuing to store fat. So, as you naturally age, your cells wear out, you go through hormonal changes, you have a decline of immune system and so forth. And you have oxidative stress. So our environments are toxic. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the chemicals that we're constantly exposed to through our beauty products, through our cleaning products, and so forth. And so when we're constantly bombarded with all of these things, um, it really affects and disrupts the hormone natural ability of our hormones to detoxify itself and to reset itself back to its normal, healthy, functional homeostasis. So again, when you're in a high carbohydrate diet, high calorie diet, and you're having frequent meals and snacking all day long, those might be empty calories. They may be filling you up temporarily or feeding a mental fix, but essentially what it's doing in terms of your body is it's really continuing to produce insulin and more fat storage. So when you eat too many carbs, your blood sugar rises, more insulin is released, and you start getting hungry because basically you're just storing fat. Your body's like going through this whole storing fat mode. And repeated circle of this insulin resistant, eating too many carbs, blood sugars rise, insulin release, hungry again, over and over again, 3 meals a day, every single day, day after day, basically your insulin begins to stop responding. And then you're just completely in fat storing mode. And we know this, that you're insulin resistant when we look at your waist circumference and we see that you're actually retaining that belly fat, and it's difficult to get rid of that middle-aged middle. So when you're experiencing that and you actually see it visibly in terms of that muffin top and not being able to get into those pants, basically you're insulin resistant. And the only way to reverse that is to retrain your body and your hormones to read data, food as data, differently. So fat burning hormones include ghrelin, insulin, leptin, and cortisol. And basically all of these hormones, the ghrelin comes out of or is built out of our stomach cells. It helps stimulate hunger. For example, patients who have been on chemotherapy for long periods of time, that destroys their ghrelin hormones, and basically they have no appetite. Insulin is produced in your pancreas, and it lowers your blood sugar, but it also stimulates fat storage. So when your insulin is consistently tapped into and triggered because of the high amount of carbohydrates they're having, basically it stops lowering your blood sugar and you're continuing to store fat. Leptin is your hormone where your brain and this hormone tells your body that you're full. Well, when you're insulin resistant, that hormone begins to stop signaling the right things that you're actually full. This is a mindset thing, it's a chemical thing, it's a hormonal thing. And your mind, body, and physiology of your body interpreting the data that you give it is basically all wonky and whacked out when you've been on a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet for a long period of time. It takes time to reset. There's no doubt about it, 14 days is a very short amount of time. And I want you to focus on being able to take these 14 days and to really start getting the information that you really need, and to be able to just really just skim the surface, just start getting into the better practice and becoming much more conscious of what is exactly happening from your mindset to your body to your physiology. And again, your cortisol is pumped out by your adrenal glands and increases blood sugar and cravings. So when you're tapping into your cortisol and you're stressed out all the time, you're constantly increasing your blood sugar and increasing your cravings. And when you're not happy in other areas of your life, often, and you don't feel good, and I have like tons of courses on food and mood, and I can tell you more about that. But essentially, when you don't feel good, a lot of people have a poor relationship with food and are searching. They're searching for ways to tap into serotonin hormone, which is the feel good hormone. And sugar does that, sugar mirrors that. So, this is all a chemical response from the data that you give your body to use. When your symptoms, some symptoms of high cortisol level is, foggy brain, difficulty sleeping, decreased sex drive, weight gain, and obesity. Obviously, you're feeling wired and tired at the same time. You may have high blood pressure, and you have a weakened immune response. Over time, you can have adrenal fatigue. And what happens with adrenal fatigue, it's going to be much more longer term implications of your DNA being broken that needs to be rehealed, reset. It's going to take a longer time. So getting ahead of your cortisol, getting ahead of your stress is really important in terms of fat loss. Your body, your liver functions to reduce toxins and removes waste from the food that you eat and the environment and the exposure that we have. And it basically converts any kind of leftover glucose into glycogen, and it also stores it as fat sometimes for future energy needs. So when your liver is not functioning properly because you've been overloading it with too many chemicals from processed foods or preservatives, basically your body is not doing its filtering job correctly. And that becomes a hormone disruptor as well. So what you eat influences your genes, and it influences your immune system function and your body's ability to reset and get back to homeostasis. So 5 steps to fat loss: replace those carbs with protein. That's it. So really designing your meals around your protein is really important. And it will give you the satiation you need, and it'll give you the amino building blocks to actually repair cellularly, in terms of your muscles, in terms of your skin, in terms of your hair, skin, and nails. You need the proper amounts of protein in order to be successful at fat loss. So is intermittent fasting, is it right for you? So if you have a history of disordered eating, or you're binging, or you're bulimic, or you've had a history of a very poor and dysfunctional relationship with food, I would not recommend intermittent fasting. It can be very stressful. It can be a very emotional thing. And so if you're preoccupied with food during the fast, then it's not going to be good for you. So you really have to kind of change the mindset about this. If you wanted to proceed with intermittent fasting, you should feel in control. You should be in good health. If you are doing intermittent fasting and you are on medications, you need to be aware that reducing your caloric intake and the dose of your medications like blood pressure or cholesterol medication will be affected. So you need to talk to your doctor about that. You need to be aware. You need to start slow and be really conscious of how you feel and what is going on. So if you're not feeling conscious and you're harried and stressed, and you think you're going to go into this intermittent fasting, it could be very, very detrimental. So I want you to take it slow. I want you to be fully conscious and trained in terms of really mindfully being aware of how you're feeling, in terms of fullness, in terms of clarity, going forward. So ridiculously high carbohydrate diet, the USDA pyramid back then was about having grains and starches at the base of the pyramid and having most of that in our diets. But really, a normal diet is full of fresh vegetables, organic vegetables, clean vegetables, and berries and seeds, and fresh animal and sea proteins and plant proteins. So really, that is a normal diet. It's not just about low carb. Um, it's completely the right way to eat. So you want to do intermittent fasting to suit your schedule. One way of doing it is just skip breakfast. So have your first meal at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and do not eat past 9 p.m. If you can shorten your windows, even better. Another way to do it is to skip lunch. This is a little bit more difficult. So basically, what you're going to do is have your first meal late at night, um, and basically have your last meal in the morning, which is breakfast. That is not a popular option, and I don't recommend that. Third is to skip dinner. So you have your first meal at 7 a.m. in the morning and your last meal by 3 p.m. And that's difficult for a lot of people because dinner is a time to get together with your spouses and your families, and it's a time of sharing. So um, um, that's a little bit harder to achieve. So the first step that you could do in just experimenting with this is just skip breakfast and not eat till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and try to shorten your windows to eat dinner before 9 p.m. So there's several methods of intermittent fasting. I'm going to start from the bottom up. But religious fasting, that means like sunrise to sunset, 12 hours. For Ramadan or Christian religions. And there's time restricted fasting. So this is the most popular and the most doable is giving yourself an 8-hour feeding window and fasting for 16 hours, utilizing your sleep time, which is usually about 7 to 8 hours. So when you leverage your sleep time and fast through the next morning, then you're giving yourself more time to actually reset its hormones and to get into fat burning mode. Modified fasting is basically 5 days on and 2 days off. So basically, 5 days, 5 days of regular eating and 2 days of fasting. I like that idea of 2 consecutive days of fasting because it's really training your body to get used to it, instead of doing alternate day fasting, which sometimes confuses your body. Alternate day fasting is 1 day on and 1 day off of fasting and shortening your eating windows. So probably the best format for you guys to start off with is time restricted fasting and just trying to skip breakfast. So 16/8 intermittent fasting looks like this. So you don't really eat till noon or 1 o'clock, and then you stop your eating of all kinds of eating solid foods after 8 o'clock. So really from 12 to 8, you're keeping your eating window within that time. And just doing that will help you just in terms of guardrails. You could do this every day, or you could do this on alternate days. But it's not necessarily going to kill you to not have breakfast. And you have to listen to your body and see how you feel. It's not for everybody. So what do you want to eat when you break your fast is really plant fats, animal fats, low sugar fruits, non-starchy plants, animal and land and sea animal proteins, and non-caloric beverages. So really you don't want to break your fast with bread, carbohydrates, even though you may feel hungry and feel low blood sugar, doesn't mean that you're going to die. If you have a history of hypoglycemia and you have low blood pressure, then you need to advise your doctor before moving forward with this type of experimentation with yourself. Most important thing is really targeting your carbohydrates between under 100 grams. Really, at 50 grams of carbohydrates, including vegetable carbs, is a good target to achieve. If you can get your chronometers and also your MyFitnessPal's out and downloaded, and track a couple of days of meals, then you'll know exactly where you're at in terms of the amount of carbohydrates you're currently having. So things to do every day: have a fasting window. Think about when you're going to do it ahead of time. Don't let yourself be stranded and unprepared. Have some good protein and design your meals around that. It says everyone could target your, grams of protein for 1 gram per pound of desired weight. I'm not sure if you're not moving, if you have a sedentary lifestyle or you're not doing weight training, that's not necessarily the case. But essentially for women, you want to hit about 65 to 80 grams to up to 100 grams of protein a day. So that's even with your fasting windows, you want to try to hit about 65 to 100 grams of protein a day, even during fasting time. So really during your fasting time, you're eating to full satiation. And you want to incorporate some resistance, high intensity resistance and weight training during this program, at least once a week, 30 minutes, doing push-ups and with weighted push-ups or squats, getting with a personal trainer once or twice a week. Doing cardio on an every single day basis is not going to help you lose flab. Flab is going to come off by shrinking the amount of carbohydrates and sugars that you have in your diet purely. Exercise will not do that. In fact, it will impede fat loss by boosting your cortisol hormones, which will affect your insulin and your blood sugar levels. So I highly recommend not feeling like you have to have a banana and a fruit and a granola bar and get on that treadmill for an hour, because you just undid everything that you could possibly be doing that's good for your body. So contrary to convention and what people think, cardiovascular exercise is not necessarily going to help you lose weight. Resistance exercise with weight-bearing exercise is going to help you the most. And you want to really max it out in terms of, your power production, your energy output during those exercise routines. So I want you to be really aware that of your hunger before you're eating, your thirst before you're eating. Check in with yourself to see what you are missing in your life, missing in terms of, do a quick little inventory. Check in with yourself on a more frequent basis over the next few days. If you feel cold from thermal loading, what that means is, you could be basically incorporating more spices into your food if you want to especially in this cold weather. And you also want to go into exercise in a fasted state. Protein up afterwards, but go into exercise without eating that Larabar or that banana. Do not eat anything, but just drink water and your electrolytes before going into exercise. That's really important. That'll help you accelerate fat loss. And so chew well, eat slowly, stay away from processed and junk foods. I want you to incorporate a new habit each day. Decide on what that's going to be and commit to it. And journal how you feel. Be very, very conscious of yourself and your hunger and where you're at. Part of this practice is just raising your level of consciousness. And I want you to practice that. It's like practicing how to build a muscle. You really have to build that muscle of raising your level of consciousness around you. How tired you are, when you're tired, how hungry, how thirsty, and so forth. And how full you are, too. Put your fork down. Breathe between bites. Those are very simple things that you could do while you're eating. Do not multitask while you're eating. And so we're going to touch base again on Saturday and talk about mindfulness practices a bit more. And hopefully this will be helpful. Please share your images of your food so that I can see and comment. If you have the meal tracker, take a screenshot of it and upload it and share with me where you're at with your carbohydrate intake so that I can advise you and help you along, and so that you're not just kind of swimming around doing your own thing. That's where the accountability is. If you participate in that way, it will help you. Track a couple of days, one on the weekday and one on the weekend, and post those up. And please share so that you can get the feedback that you need. So I hope this is helpful. Please post any questions, share your pictures, and doing a great job. Keep it up.